Gears of War is the reason I took the plunge and bought a Xbox 360 years ago. Something about the promotions for it, you know the one with the remix version of the song Mad World, and the gameplay I saw initially drew me in. Once I bought the console in the first Gears of War, I proceeded to play the heck out of it. I came for the gameplay and visual style, but stayed for the world building and co-op experience. Every new Gears game that released then became a big deal for me and my friends, all the way through the end of the series in Gears of War 3. After much time with the story, then even more time playing Horde together, we all slowly drifted away from the Gears series, thinking it to be done. Then, Gears of War 4 came around. I actually bought an Xbox One S that came with Gears of War 4 because it was a good deal at the time. I had found myself again, starting anew with a fresh batch of characters in a world that I absolutely loved years before. However, with Gears of War 4, I didn't have the same good feelings I had with Gears 1. It wasn't a bad experience necessarily, but more of a why was this game made type of a thing. I almost passed on playing Gears 5, but thanks to a new PC and Game Pass, I decided to give it a try. So how does this new Gears game stack up to the others in the series, both the original trilogy and the beginning of this new series? Well, first off, this was the first big game that I played on my new PC that I picked up just a couple months ago, and I was blown away by how good it looked and ran. Now, something to note here for those who game on PC, I have the NVIDIA GTX 1660, which apparently has some weird issues with the game. It gives you an error right at the beginning letting you know. Now, apparently if you have the 1660 Ti, you'll be fine. But there were a couple times where I had to completely close the game down, then restart it. My game would start stuttering and it wouldn't get out of it, or it would glitch out a little bit. These were few and far between, so it didn't really affect me much. Okay, enough of the technical stuff. The game is gorgeous to behold, but that is nothing new to the Gears series. What really sets Gears 5 apart from the previous entry, and moves it closer to the likes of Gears 3 in my book, is the variety of the landscapes and the general designs of each area. Now, there weren't a ton of different overworld-like areas. There's cityscape, pseudo-forest / industrial facility, snow, and some other places I don't want to spoil. But the variety within these areas and the way the game flows is very, very nice. The fact that the game somehow flowed so well, even with the incorporation of the newly featured open areas, I'll get to that in just a sec, really surprised and impressed me. The art style is still as cool as ever, but it's simply been updated. Character models are very well done, there are nice details sprinkled throughout, and everything just looks crisp. So, those open areas I briefly mentioned a second ago, at first I wasn't looking forward to them. As I've grown older, open world games need to be something truly special to get me motivated to explore them, or even just complete the game itself, and I never came to the Gears series for an open world. I'd much rather have a more focused story that has an open feel to it, but not necessarily be open. However, I think I now prefer something along the lines of Gears 5. There are only a couple of open areas in the game, a welcome decision for someone like me, and they feel both empty and filled with things to do. It's really odd, but it fits the story and the aesthetic. There are only pockets of civilization throughout this Gears universe, so there's plenty enough to do, but it never feels overly populated or, more importantly to me, overwhelming. In each open area, there are side missions that can pop up. Firstly, navigating these areas is a blast with the skiff, and you can do neat things like store up to 2 weapons for later use in a different area. Secondly, all side missions feel natural. There was rarely a time where I felt I was going way out of my way to try and uncover a new mission. For example, I'd be making my way to the next story objective and suddenly I'd come upon a plane wreckage, and my partner would say something about it and I could choose to check it out or keep going. At first, I checked things out just to see what they were about, but I found myself exploring much more the more I played. Though the two games couldn't be further apart in genre from each other, I got a similar feeling in Gears 5 that I did with Zelda Breath of the Wild. I wanted to explore and just see what would unfold. These side missions would give new gear upgrades, which would help with future missions, but my favorite part about these? They contained little mini-stories that further built the world. There were even a couple places I discovered that were cool little pieces of Gears history. So, it looks great and the open areas are a welcome addition, but how does it play? Well, to sum it up nice and quickly, it's more Gears. And you know what? That ain't a bad thing. If you've enjoyed the gameplay in the Gears series before, then you'll feel right at home with Gears 5. There are some nice additions though, mainly in relation to Jack, your little robot bud who turns out to be quite useful. There are various upgrades for Jack that are both unlocked along the way through the story and found as a result of completing those side missions I talked about earlier. These abilities include giving you and your team an invisibility cloak for a limited time, stunning enemies, grabbing out of reach items, and even reviving you and your squad mates if you get downed. Jack is a welcome addition that never got in the way or felt tacked on, and he only improved upon the solid cover and shoot Gears gameplay we've come to know and love over the years. As far as the online multiplayer, it's similar to how the gameplay largely ever was before. The online multiplayer and the co-op are solid. Now, there are some instances I came across in online multiplayer that were odd. A random headshot or instant death would suddenly knock my death counter up by 1, but this never happened enough to bother me much. And as before, there are the same types of game modes to play: versus, King of the Hill, Team Deathmatch, etc. And yes, Horde mode is back, but with some changes. All in all, the multiplayer is quite fun and very familiar if you've played Gears games before. As for co-op, it works brilliantly, just like it always has been. Now, I had some issues playing with my wife while she was on the Xbox One S, but those issues were more technical stuff on my end and the fact that we were connecting a PC player, me, to a console player, her. Once we got past the weird little technical hiccups though and we're in the game, it worked great. So the gameplay's solid, the open areas are a great addition, the online functionality is very fun. But I still haven't told you why Gears 5 shot up my personal list of favorite Gears games, and one of my favorites for the year. Gears 4 felt unnecessary. Though I didn't mind my experience with it, I ended up thinking by the end of the game, why? We didn't need another Gears game. Gears 4 didn't push the series any further. There wasn't anything really memorable. There weren't memorable moments for me or for my wife, in fact. Gears 5, though? I cared about Kate and James. I loved the inclusion of the old cast, but it didn't feel like it was focused on them, which allowed the newbies to really take over the main roles in the story. The world was further built through its storyline, which is good, and various other ways, like those side missions in the open areas of the game. I actually cared what would happen to these characters. I wanted to know what would happen next. I wasn't surprised by some revelations, but they were done in very good ways. And there is one thing that happens in Gears 5 that transformed the game from a great addition and progression in the series to a necessity in the series moving forward. I won't spoil it, but it completely caught me by surprise, and for me, it was a tough call. On the whole, Gears 5 is a huge improvement over Gears of War 4, but doesn't quite dethrone my favorite game in the series, Gears of War 3. But it completely drew me back into a series I thought ended back in 2011 and got me invested in almost all of the new characters. Having the same old Gears gameplay with a few new additions is great. The story was a bit slow to get going, but once it did, it didn't let me go. The multiplayer options are fun enough, and the co-op gameplay is as good as it ever was. This game has effectively gotten me back into my Gears kick, and I am now anxiously awaiting what the developers have in store for their next outing.